wanna sing your song, 'cause music makes us friends, and friends like you are what we're here for, doing what we do. I wanna make you music, I wanna sing your song, yes, I want to share a good day with you and be your special friend. You and me and Beacon 303 music. You and me and Beacon 303. The Beacon Breakfast Crew with Myatt and Perry.
I remember that.
Serving the universe. Beacon Radio.
We are celebrating 40 years of commercial radio in Wolverhampton. Myatt and Perry have teamed up again after just over 17 years. It's good to be back.
Yeah, where were my birthday cards? Do you know what I've learned in 17 years?
Go on.
There's rules governing broadcast.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Well, I'm surprised we weren't hung, drawn and quartered.
Our only defence would be we didn't know what we were doing, but you'll find that out in the next couple of hours. We still don't.
I was working in Manchester as a media director of an advertising agency, a media manager or whatever it was. And I looked after, I had about £30 million on my portfolio, which was a lot of money. And it's okay, it was fine, I could handle the job, enjoyed the job, but it was very stressful. And I think I got to 27, 28, and I thought, I'll go into a smaller agency, I don't want to do this. I went to the smaller agency, got actually paid more money, but it all went a bit wrong because I got married to the boss's girlfriend by accident. He had a sense of humour failure, and he fired me. And my solicitor said, don't get a job in advertising while we sort this out because we're going to sue him. So I went, okay. And then I remembered that I'd been out for a drink with a rep from Beacon Radio, and at the end of the drink, it was at lunch, I think, and after the end of the lunch she said, you'd be really good on the radio, have you thought about doing it? And I said, well, how much does it pay? And she said, well, you can earn up to £15,000 a year. Well, I was on about double that at the time, so I thought, okay, won't do that. But then all this happened, I got fired, remembered that, so I phoned the number she'd given me, and I spoke to a bloke called Peter Wagstaff. Do you know him? And he said, well, look, why don't you come in for an interview? Oh, an audition. I thought it was very showbiz. So I went in for the audition, and I came down, I think I was living in Stoke-on-Trent, and the audition was him being all the callers and me being the presenter. Anyway, at the end of it, he said, he said, I'll give you a go at that. Oh, no, he didn't. I went home, and when I got home, the phone was ringing, and I picked it up, and he said, okay, I'll give you a go. So initially the idea was that I would do 5 days on my own. But then he phoned back and said, I've got this other bloke that wants to work here as well. It'd be really good if I could pair the two of you together. And so he gave us a start date. I think it was January the 4th, 1988. The 4th or the 5th. And that was the day I met you.
I mean, it's one of those situations where you click, and I think that was absolutely what happened from both sides, you know. From that moment on, I kind of felt like he knew what I was thinking. I sort of felt like I knew what he was thinking, which when you're doing a double-headed radio show is tremendously advantageous. And even at the time, I remember my girlfriend saying to me, well, I listen to you guys, but I can't quite work out who's saying what, because it all sort of streams together and kind of meshes together. I remember saying, well, he's got a Liverpool accent, I'm from the Midlands, you know, surely you can hear who's saying which bit. But it did just seem to click and work. And, you know, from that day on, you know, I've thoroughly enjoyed. And, I mean, we became firm friends, went on holiday together. Mm-hmm. We've been all over the place, had good times, shared the bad as well, a few of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it did right from the start seem to just... I don't want to say work, because that's such a vague term. We understood, I think, what was needed to make a double-header show successful without anybody ever having to tell us. There are certain things that you have to observe, but nobody told us that we had to, like not talking over each other. It's having the discipline to shut up for a bit, but we never actually had to sit down and talk about that. We never talked about how we were going to put a show together. It just kind of happened, and that's the best, strongest way to do it. Got to be.
Yeah, I think the other key point about that is understanding where you're going to go, and then the second, in fact, second is probably the most important bit, is neither of us were ever vying for the centre stage. So if we got a piece that was working towards some sort of punchline, out, an end, because everything has to have an end, it didn't matter to us. If the circumstance meant that it was more stronger for Ian to have the punchline and out, fine. If it was moulding its way that it was going to work, I mean, in some pieces we'd change that mid-flow. It was planned that okay, you can have the you do the okay, but then it just worked so that it meant it was better for me. Then that's the way we did it, and we did, as long as the thing worked as a unit and people generally seem to like what we do, then that was great. That was a win.
I'm not entirely sure the public worked out for some time, our listenership worked out for some time that there were two of us. We used to get loads of letters suggest to Martin Perry.
Dear Martin.
Yes, I think, like, you stink. And also, quite apart from the sort of link constructions, sometimes you have to deconstruct a link right in the middle of it because you've gone a separate direction, and can you ride with that as well? And so sometimes you would be heading for an out, heading for the end of your link, but actually what you would say, either he'd say something or I'd say something, depending on where a link goes, and you both instinctively recognise at the same time that's where the link ends, bang into the music. So we never ever had a problem with that, ever.
And there's been many, many times when I've thought halfway through a piece that I'm comfortable here to have a quick sip of coffee because, wet the whistle. And there's been many occasions when he spotted me do that, and he's then turned up the heat and I've sprayed the desk with coffee because, we do have such a lot of fun when we're doing what we do. I thoroughly enjoy it.
The fun element, I don't think you can understate. I mean, I always felt like I was getting away with something. I don't know about you, that they were paying me to go in and do this and paying me to have a career to do this. And it was just seriously so much fun to do. I mean, Dave's absolutely right. We didn't just work together. We went away together. We went to, I think the first one was Corfu, wasn't it, in 1988?
Yeah. And Tenerife.
Tenerife, we've been to the States. Yeah, we've had a few holidays. And, we enjoyed doing it. It was fun. It made us laugh. And I think that's really why we did it. And because it made us laugh, I think it made other people laugh as well. And people joined in. That's the other thing. I think because in a double header, you've got to be really, 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 really careful that what you don't do is just make it in jokes all the time and it's just inclusive. And I don't think that ever happened because we always had like full switchboards and people wanted to join in. They wanted to be a part of it, and that's a really, really strong position for a show to be in when people want to be. Well, they want to join in. So you don't close them off. You open the door, say, "Come in, come on. You're all as mad as we are. Come in." And we had regular callers, didn't we? And they were characters who we'd milk shamelessly.
If they were fun and they added to the overall output, then why not? And if they're part of the regular scene, and if somebody didn't like it, they could always ring in and take that position or have a shout about it. Plenty of people did that. I think the key point that you've just made there, it's so difficult. It's a one-to-one medium radio, and it's so easy to slip in to announcing. I mean, you see it on telly all the time. Good morning, everybody. Well, it's not everybody. It's one person that you're addressing. And though it might sound a very subtle difference between good morning everybody and good morning, but it's crucially important that you remember that when you're on the radio, because it's one person that's at the other end, and if you make them feel that you're addressing them, and then they will feel more part of it rather than being, sort of an eavesdropper on two guys having a laugh together.
Yeah, we started off together doing the phone show, and I think after I remember actually after the first show, Pete Wagstaff phoned up and said, "Well done, Pinky and Perky," was his exact phrase. And then our week-long contract got extended to a year. And at the end of the year, we'd been sitting in for Chris Ashley on Beacon Breakfast, and at the end of the year Pete said, I want you to do breakfast and I want you to do the morning zoo. What's one of them? So he sent us to America. Sounds very glamorous now, doesn't it? He sent us to America. But he did, and we stayed in a hotel for a couple of weeks. Dave went on to produce the new station Jingles package, which is still my favourite Jingles package of all time. Then we sat in a hotel and listened to Mark and Brian, didn't we? And just went and got drunk and sat on the beach and things like that, and bought big pink plastic sunglasses and all sorts of things. And so then we did breakfast for a year, wasn't it? But it launched WABC, or there was a separate service launched. I don't think we were ever given the credit for holding the audience with the way we did. But at the end of it, Pete decided that was enough for us two, and that it wasn't quite as safe as maybe he wanted. And so we hived off at that. It was kind of hived off because we'd always done the Saturday breakfast, the Saturday sports show. So then at the end of the tenure on breakfast, I got put on the late phone show, and you went off to, was it mid-afternoon?
I did the afternoon drive show, and I think looking back in, and we've not discussed this yet, but the timing of that probably coincided with the run-up to the radio station being fattened up to be sold, and therefore having two presenters covering one show. I mean, it's obvious. So I think the move to split us was not just born out of the idea that the two of us together weren't working on breakfast, because I think it was, it got a lot of following. Yes, it also garnered a few complaints along the way, but when you're trying to push the boundaries a bit and try different things, that's what you're going to get. There will be some of that.
We never actually sat down, did we, and said, let's push the boundaries. It just happened. It's just what we did. It was a natural progression. Nobody actually told us, or nobody told me, I don't know, I can't really speak for Dave, but nobody told me there was any such thing as broadcasting laws. Who'd have known?
Well, I knew of some rules, but I hadn't read them in detail at that point.
Didn't know what they were. So yeah, then I went off, I did the phone show, but we always did either a Saturday or I think the other one was creatively called
the Sunday service.
Myatt and Perry's Sunday service, which gave us an opportunity to put knickers on, which was lovely. I mean, but stuff like that. We never, ever deliberately set out to offend anybody. I mean, we've probably offended loads of people on the way, but it wasn't deliberate. It was just like, give us a Sunday show. What's the first thing we're going to do? We're going to invent a couple of comedy vicars and stick them on. That's what we're going to do.
Get some organ music in there,
organ music,
the swell of the organ pipes.
That's what we did, didn't we? We used to have a that's right.
Bless you.
Yeah.
It was sort of vaguely Dick Emery-esque in its.
We owe a lot. I think we owe a lot. I mean, I was reading some of the jokes because Dave saved all the preparation sheets. I was reading some of the jokes. I think we must have nicked most of them off the two Ronnies. The ones that we did nick, we actually did do quite a lot of our own reading that, and I'm surprised. Now I'm 57. I'm quite surprised what 27-year-old, 28-year-old me was saying on the radio.
Times were different though, and everything's moved. What was accept. I think we've got to give ourselves a little bit of slack there.
Yeah, nobody cared really about what you said then.
Because what you get offended about now is very different. Society's changed. Communication strategies and communication channels have changed immensely. And so what perhaps was acceptable and just nudging the boundaries a bit then would be absolutely unacceptable now.
I'll give you an example. What's s'more play? It's what Smurfs do before they smug. Now,
it's a great joke, isn't it? But you went on the air today and said that. You
yeah, you wouldn't get. You'd be off.
You just wouldn't even think about it.
Where's your Uri? Bye.
But,
so so it has changed, and I think very much you have to put when we were working together. I think you're right. Put it in the historical context because things were different, and I think people were more laid back. People were far more tolerant. It wasn't like today. I mean, you look at the social media today. A lot of people just spend the time getting offended. They seem to have forgotten if you don't like it, unfollow, don't do this, don't do that. But then people had to be really bloody angry to complain, didn't they? Because they had to sit down, and we did get complaints. But I don't think we were. I think the thing that really saved us is we weren't trying to be clever, we weren't trying to push boundaries, and we were never malicious.
No.
Never.
Absolutely
It
not.
was fun.
It was never personal.
And you could tell it was fun. Once, just tune in. It's fun. These two guys are having fun with the audience. That's the important thing. We took the audience on the ride and invited them into the party, and they accepted our invitation. And I sometimes wonder, if you brought Myatt and Perry back on a regular basis now, what would happen? Why it would have to be different? It could not be the same, because we know about the laws now. And I sometimes wonder whether or not Myatt and Perry would have a place in broadcasting today. I don't know is the answer. I think so, because I think the bottom line is, whatever you do on the radio, it's got to be entertaining. And we were all, I mean, it sounds terrible, yes, we were always entertaining, but we were.
Well, in the immortal words of Sir Terry Wogan, they either like you or they don't. It's as simple as that. And I think by and large, most of the folks that we came into contact with on the phones, face to face at lots and lots of events, generally speaking, they just liked the kickabout kind of sense of humour and having a bit of fun, a little bit of a poke, gentle ribbing, but nothing too offensive.
It seems difficult to imagine now we're in our dotage, but back then, in them days, yes, in them days. I mean, I remember we used to go and open things, didn't we? Closed a few things in our time. But like the Hitman and Her came to town, and all we had to do was stand on stage, go, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Hitman and Her. But because Myatt and Perry was a name, they wanted to buy it, and we opened stores. And
met Pete Waterman and Hazel Dean and all those. We missed Kylie Moog. She was on the same launch tour, but she wasn't at that particular nightclub event.
Everybody has at least one regret about their career. That's mine. So, but it would be interesting to see how Myatt and Perry went today. But I think, if you look at radio today, it's far more... I mean, God knows, our boss at the time was fairly micromanagement, but he gave us creative freedom, and he let us run with stuff, and he did support us a heck of a lot. I wonder today whether or not radio presentation is so micromanaged. And what's really interesting, and it wouldn't be us if we didn't say something controversial, but how many of these people who are telling you how to do a radio show have actually ever done a radio show ever in their lives? And I just think that's absolutely wrong. I think the talent's been driven out of radio as people try and micromanage it, and it's been boiled down to the lowest common denominator in terms of what's acceptable to do and say. And I think the fun's gone out of it from when I listen around the dial.
It's a great shame. It seems like callers are a thing of the past, and of course callers were such a major part of what we were doing on the air that they added to the fabric and the feel of the thing, and it embedded what you're doing on the air straight back where it's meant to be listened in. So a lot of radio stations now don't have any caller participation at all. So there's no reaction to what you're doing. It cuts out the opportunity to know instantly whether something's really flying or whether it actually has run its course and to leave it.
And we were lucky in that respect, because if you do a show on your own, you're very much in a kind of bubble. You don't really know whether or not a caller's sort of making sense or whatever, but you don't really know whether or not what you're doing is any good until the figures come out. Whereas we did, because if I saw him laughing or he saw me laughing, or you got the vibe, didn't you? So if it's I think the theory was, if it was entertaining us, it would entertain everybody else. But it's really good for feedback to see what the other person does. And I mean, probably we did links that absolutely stink, but I don't remember any.
Oh God, that's the best thing about radio, isn't it? Also, the worst thing: you work up a really great piece, spend time preparing, thinking how you're going to do it, execute it, fab. But the same goes for that. It's gone in the ether, gone in a flash.
Well, that's what you think. I discovered recently that there is a lot of Midnight Line, but there's also Myatt and Perry, which you can download off the internet.
Oh, happy days.
Yeah, did you not know? So just when you thought, that was 30 years ago, nobody remember that, you said, it's horrible. I mean, it's really frightening, because I downloaded this show, it was a Midnight Line, I was listening to it, and I had my head like that. Oh, God. What are you saying? And the trouble is that a split second before you hear the tape what you're going to say.
Oh, it's all coming back.
It all comes back. So there are still Myatt and Perry shows out there on the internet to inspire a new generation of broadcasters.
Marvellous.
Our work is done.
After we were split to do separate shows, on the horizon was the sale of Beacon Radio, and Beacon was fairly swiftly sold to GWR, which spelt a lot of change for the entire radio station. And you know, we could debate for hours about what they did to the radio station and the various merits and drivers behind what they were doing. The bottom line is, though, they paid a lot of money, and at the end of the day it was their choice to do what they wanted with it, because they then owned the station. So at that point I went on to look after WABC, which I was on the air as well as being the programme manager, and so at that point even the Saturday afternoon connection came to an end, didn't it? So that was a great shame, because that was while we were doing one show a week together, I was still having a load of fun, even though it was 1 day a week instead of doing 6 days a week together. So I then went on to do that, and then moved on to become programme controller for Mercia from there, and I went across to Mercia in Coventry, and from there throughout radio jobs, you know, I went to BMD at Silk FM in Macclesfield and did that for about 3 years, and then on to BMD for a small group of 3 stations for another 2 or 3 years, and since then just done a few shows in between. So that's my sort of potted history. Ian, he went to the BBC.
Well, I went to the BBC eventually. I started off in a chocolate factory, making chocolate. It was really annoying because they had Beacon on at nights, and I could listen to the I can't remember the guy, it doesn't matter, but it wasn't as good as what I was doing. And I used to get all these guys coming to the bit of the factory I worked at to look, so you felt like an exhibit, really, you know, falling from the heavens. So I worked there for well, it wasn't long, it was only about 6 months, and then Telford FM was starting in Telford, strangely enough. So Pete Wagstaff, who'd been at Beacon, phoned me up and said, "Oh, do you want to be a journalist?" And I went, "Yeah, I'll do journalism, whatever." So I went there for a couple of years, and the guy who was the news editor moved on. I mean, it's a one-man newsroom. Well, it was 2-man, now it's a one-man newsroom with me, and I'm it. But it was a good way to learn, so I did that for a couple of years, 2-3 years. And then a job came up with BBC Shropshire, and they wanted a presenter who could also be a journalist. Fantastic. So I went for the job, and I didn't get it. But then the guy they did give the job to dropped out after about 3 months. So they phoned up and they said, "Look, rather than interview again, we've talked to HR and we can offer you the job. Would you want to take it?" So I did, and I've been there, well, over a decade. Well, coming up to 13 years now. And I'm also so I'm a journalist. I still do I don't do the early breakfast show anymore. That went in the cuts. But I am a live reporter, so I go out on locations and do reports back into the studio, which go out live. I'm also father of chapel for the National Union of Journalists, which is something that I really enjoy because it's something completely different from my kind of day job. So I get involved in the BBC, a different area of the BBC there, which is really interesting to do. I'm there now. I mean, who knows what will happen with the funding and everything, but I really enjoy my job. I really enjoy radio. It was a really good... I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I said it's just... You get spoiled, I think, in radio because it is such a gas and it's such a good laugh and it's you can't imagine yourself doing anything else. Nobody would employ us anyway, would they? He's had to work for himself.
Yeah.
Well, nobody else would give us a job.
I do miss it, the regular buzz of being on the air. You know, Bob Lawrence once said to me, who used to work at Beacon, "Oh, it gets in your blood." And when he said it, I thought I treat it as a bit of a glib throwaway line, but actually it's many, many times come back to me, rushing back to me, that it is in your veins. So much so that, you know, you just need to feed that. And
it's a drug, isn't it? I remember, you said about Bob Lawrence, I remember Pete Clements, did the overnights on Beacon, said to me once, "It's an absolute privilege to work on the radio, you must always remember that." And I thought, what a completely crap thing to say. But actually, over the years, what he said is absolutely right. It's absolutely spot on. It's got to be the best job in the world. 2, 3, 4.
This was the world's worst record.
Yeah, it was,
On
wasn't it?
pink vinyl.
Yeah.
Mrs. Miller.
They used to love it when we played this.
Gentle is the rain.
Great.
Quality.
Was she the one? Now, is it me, or was the album actually called Two Hands on the Organ?
You just made that up.
No, there is one called Two Hands on the Organ. It's Kenny Everett's favourite ever, was his favourite ever album.
I think this was a Kenny Everett compilation called 20 Bursts of the Worst.
Made this day for us just to fall in love.
It's great, it's got everything.
Is that enough of that one?
Yeah.
Satellite weather and more chances to win.